In the previous section, we talked about the people who discovered the disease-causing agents, and today we're going to focus more on the causes or different reasons of things that could cause diseases to happen. So we know that the presence of disease-causing things, so whether that's bacteria, viruses, or fungi, all have the ability to cause diseases. But there are other things we also need to discuss that can cause diseases as well. So in addition to our things up here, and remember that viruses are not living, but we're still including them in this category. So the next thing that can cause a disease are things that are controlled by hereditary factors, and this means that they are genes that you inherit from your parents. So you could have some gene that causes you to get this disease and has absolutely nothing to do with any bacteria or viruses. Another thing that could go wrong to cause diseases is things that are controlled by environmental factors. And so this could be that you are consuming toxic substances, you have poor nutrition, unhealthy eating habits, exposure to mutagens, or many others. And these are dangerous because they can show up right away and have effects on you now, or they can have effects on you years down the road. So this word here, mutagens, these are agents that are causing mutations. And so an easy environmental factor that you could use for this is that an unhealthy habit, it's a mutagen, is sun tanning. So anytime you have a change in skin color, that is mutations to your DNA. So that's a mutagen. Those are caused by the amount of time you spend out in the sun. So that's an environmental factor that could lead to you having skin cancer. And the last category that we need to talk about are things that are gene mutations. So gene mutations are different from hereditary factors. That's something being passed on to you. Gene mutations is specifically talking about a mutation. This could lead to uncontrolled cell division, and uncontrolled cell division often leads to the development of cancer. So now let's talk about this in terms of bacteria and viruses. So in this section, we're going to focus on bacteria and viruses causing diseases rather than the factors we had on the previous slide. So why are bacteria and viruses in particular such threat to humans? Well, they can live in a variety of environments, which means that there's a lot of them. There's more bacteria than there are pretty much any other species of anything. And so because they're so diverse, it makes them harder to study, or at least harder to study all of them. So an example of this is that humans are extensively studied compared to, other species of animals. And there are bacteria that live on humans and we still don't know what they are. They're still unclassified. Another thing that makes them harder to study is the fact that we can't see them. I can be sick and not see what is causing it. And another big reason is the fact that they reproduce so fast. And the main reason why that this is such a big deal is because it allows them to evolve adaptations in populations quickly. So an example of this could be MRSA. MRSA. And it stands for multi-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. This is your typical staph infection, so wrestlers might be familiar with this, but the MR, multiple resistant, is the fact that there are no antibiotics left to treat these types of bacteria. And the reason for that is the fact that they evolve and adapt so quickly. So by the time we have made this new antibiotic, we give it to them a couple times, they reproduce every 20 minutes, they can go through a lot of generations in a really short amount of time. So now let's focus on bacterial disease and how exactly bacteria are causing the disease. So something to think about before we start is the idea that you always have bacteria on you all the time. Even when you're not sick, they're still there. So how do we tell the difference between normal bacteria on us or in us and when an actual disease is happening? So what happens here is that they're first going to invade the organism, and from there they must have some sort of challenge with the immune system. So this is where they must win. They must be stronger than our immune system for them to actually make us sick. They're there all the time, but they don't always win this challenge. And they're going to then use our cells for food, and they're going to have the breakdown of our healthy cells and tissues for that source of food. And now that they've won this challenge, they're going to release toxin that can travel to different tissues throughout the body. And then once they're in the bloodstream, this is just going to continue over and over again. And now we can focus on how viruses cause disease. And we talked about this a little with the lytic and lysogenic cycle. But viruses are different from bacteria in that they typically target specific tissues rather than the body as a whole system. So examples of this is that the influenza virus is targeting the respiratory tract. Another example is hepatitis, and hepatitis is specifically targeting the liver cells. If we talk about how they work, they're first going to target our cells and invade them. From there, they're going to hijack their protein expression mechanisms. And if we don't recall, protein expression is the process of going from DNA to RNA to protein. And after they have these mechanisms down, they have the ability to run the body. So they're now just going to continue to make copies of themselves using these expression mechanisms. So your body will actually go and make more viruses for the virus.